if you want to get an A, you'd have to get a 99 on every single thing in order to do that. And she was like, it's just not realistic. So I was like, if I come here every single day, like I was like, if you don't have time, it's fine. But if you have time, if I come in, will you help? Will you teach me? Like help me figure out how to learn this? And she was like, if you show up, I will be here.
Hello and welcome to the Building Men podcast. Building Men, become the strongest version of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. What's up, brother?
What's happening, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great, my friend. I'm doing great. We have our first in-guest studio today on the Building Men podcast, a big day. And it's a special guest because our guest, Joel Glotfelty, hopefully I'm saying that name correctly, is a fourth-year medical student at Rutgers University. He is also the CEO and founder of Finish the Race. You've heard a lot recently about Finish the Race, a lot about their mission, and we are so aligned with what they're doing at Finish the Race and Joel and his brother, and we're thrilled to have him on the Building Man podcast. So I wanted to welcome Joel to the Building Man podcast. What's up, my man? Welcome.
Hey, man. How's it going? Thanks for having me. Super excited. I've been thinking about this a lot, ever since I came across your page, and I listened to your first podcast. I was, like, totally sold. And then it was just basically like a little race to get to this point. Like, when do we end up getting to link up and get to do something together?
And it's so, I want to say serendipitous. Anthony?
Did you?
Serendipitous?
I have no idea. I've heard it. I feel like I've used it in a sentence, but probably wrong before. Wait, I'm not even going to guess. I don't want to.
So I'll tell the journey. And so I started wearing people's gear on the podcast, and I was like, fuck it, I'll wear a hat and I'll reach out to the company and say, hey, if I wear your hat on my podcast, maybe you'd be interested in sponsoring Building Men in some way, shape, or form. And Finish the Race, FTR Apparel, commented on something, sort of following me or commenting on something, and I went nowhere with asking people if they were interested in sponsoring the Building Men podcast. So it was either you or your brother reached out to me or liked something that we did on Building Men. So I reached out and I did a voice message and I said, hey, I'm loving what you're doing. This is amazing. This journey you guys are on, I'm so inspired by it. And I tell you about it. I'm like, yeah, this guy's from Finish the Race. They're interested in meeting with us. You're like, dude, I fucking know those guys.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Right? Yeah, that was the craziest part about it because I worked with Joel's brother was my boss when I was working, right? So, like, I knew both of them beforehand because Joel's brother, Brian, he ran this fitness company that I worked for. And I worked underneath him at the school that I was at. And then Joel came along, like, I guess it was my last year or 2 years when I was working there. And you were working with me for a year, man. So I met you. And then we did fantasy football together. And we were like, so I knew both of them. And all of a sudden you were like, hey, I found these guys. I was like, dude, they're
I found these guys.
I know them. Yeah. But the fact that you found them without me introducing him, that's how I felt like that was meant to be there.
Serendipity.
So that's what serendipity is. So can you explain it in a definition? So it's
basically like the universe is conspiring in your favor. Things are happening that it puts everything in the exact...
Synchronicities.
It's pretty much putting things in the exact right spot that they're supposed to be without us realizing it. It's pretty much happening in that really magical way.
So it's like when people
it's like when your hair looks a certain way. You get out of the shower and you're
like, wow, that's serendipitous. So that's what I would say to that. Okay. Well, wow.
So a lot of nonsense goes on here, Joel. So thank you again for being on the Building Men podcast. Now we'll kind of get into it a little bit. When me, you and my brother went out one night and we were just kind of shooting the shit talking about, the synchronicities between Building Men and Finish the Race and, brothers that are working together in that capacity. And you start talking about your journey and I was like, this is amazing. We need to get you on the podcast. You need to share your story because you've had so many ups and downs on your journey. And now to be where you are, it's a truly inspirational story. So why don't you take us back to, again, we talked, as we were getting ready to go, I'm so inspired by the hero's journey. And you've been on a couple of them in the course of your life so far. And I'm really interested. So start maybe in your middle and high school kind of years and, how it went in that point and how, bring us to where you're in college, or you're interested in going to college. Why don't you start there with us, Joel?
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to work in the fact that I was homeschooled, and I thought that listening to you guys talk about serendipity and synchronicities, or whatever you said, is a good segue to that. I believe you guys had Mike England on here, and he used the synchronicities a little bit, and I was listening, and I was like, man, when I'm on there, the vocab's gonna be like way less than that, because in homeschool, I don't remember them like teaching us words and stuff. So that's not my strength, but yeah. So we were all we grew up in a pretty tight knit. It was actually like a pretty religious household, and my parents wanted to homeschool us. So even up to middle school, we were all homeschooled. And then some stuff kind of went down. My dad ended up getting sick. He was diagnosed with lymphoma. And my mom, who had been doing all of the homeschooling, she wasn't working. She basically had to go to work, right? Because now my dad's getting chemo. He's going to be too sick to do work. So she had to get a job. And with that, she basically lost the ability to keep teaching us. So we all just kind of randomly got tossed into school. So at that point, I think Brian was in 8th grade. I actually got held back. I got put into 5th grade because I was going to be really small. I'm like one of those borderline birthdays. So, we started that with basically like, I had no idea what's going on. I had been teaching myself stuff, working at home. And I think when you do that, you kind of develop this idea that maybe you are better than you are at stuff. Like, in school at home, I was crushing it. I was,
You were top in your class.
right. I was Mr. Gifted and Talented, and so I didn't have any.
You were the smartest fucking 5th grader there ever was in your homeschool.
Exactly, man. So, I didn't have any gauge for what the rest of the world was like. And I think, that kind of awakening was kind of the start of this journey where things just started to really snowball on me as I got to school, and right away, because of some test scores I had from some like national tests you had to take as homeschoolers, they threw me in this like gifted and talented program, and these kids are just way ahead of me. They're so smart, they're bright, they know math, and like I have no idea what's going on, and I start to realize like, yo, like I don't belong here. So I kind of leaned into that as like a young kid, really having my confidence challenged academically for the first time. I just kind of leaned into just like kind of slacking, not really trying hard, because I always thought, it's easier if at the end of the day, and this, I think this is a big mistake, but it's easier if at the end of the day you can look at something and be like, yeah, I decided not to do that. Like, I didn't fail, I just didn't do it. I didn't work hard, so I could have done it, but I didn't. So that started to kind of happen all the way through school. My grades just kept going down and down to the point that in high school, I remember my mom used to have this thing where when I would get a D on my report card, which happened all the time, I would get grounded until my next set of grades would come out, and I couldn't do anything, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't hang out with friends. All I could do was read. So like, bro, I read the whole Twilight series. Like that's how bad it was.
Were you like the vampire guy, or did you like the werewolf better? Like who was your guy? Who was your?
I was all about the werewolf guy.
The werewolf
Yeah. I thought there's a lot of creepy things I think about the vampire guy, so I really kind of leaned into the werewolf.
All right. He looks better without a shirt on, too.
There's no way to make it like masculine or anything. Just the fact I know. I'm still the werewolf guy. Yeah.
We
got to figure out his name too.
Oh man, I know his name.
Oh yeah, we're
Taylor.
Taylor Lautner is his real name, and Jacob Black was his name in the books. I know this because I read them all because I had nothing else to do because I kept getting D's. Yeah. So kind of went that route and just scraped by high school. Didn't really have any business going to college. Never really was interested in anything I was doing. My mom basically had this rule that was like, if you wanna live at home, then you gotta at least try college. So for me, with our family, we basically had grown up with like no money. When my dad, before he was sick, he delivered pizzas. Towards the end, before he passed away, he ended up getting a job as a jeweler and made a little bit of money. But if you think about someone delivering pizzas and my mom not working, I don't think we ever had a household income of over $30,000. So we would go to food drives to get food. When we would have cereal, we would drink it with powdered milk. I don't know if you ever had that, but it's disgusting. No. So things like that. So to me, I kind of put this emphasis on this short-term gratification of getting money, getting a job in high school, working at Rita's Water Ice, and I got a job in a restaurant. And I was like, I'm going to do this instead of school because now I have money. I can buy myself a car, which means I can go wherever I want. I can buy myself a cell phone. I can talk to friends. So I kind of put all my emphasis in that. And that really carried through to college, when, I didn't even apply for college. My mom applied for me, and I got into Rutgers Camden, which is basically like community school, but just a little bit, part of the Rutgers system. So I went there, but I was focused on working jobs. I majored in business because that's what my brother did. I had no interest, and within the first year, I like completely failed out. I got in like all Fs, 1D, and I think 1C in like a social sciences. And they basically put me on academic probation. They're like, if you don't turn this around, like you're not going to be part of this university. So I was just like, whatever, I'm done here. So I dropped out. I picked up a job in construction during the day. And then I still worked in the restaurant at night. I worked my way up from a busboy to a waiter to a bartender. Then I started doing some bar managing, started to make good money. So between those two things, I was kind of set. I didn't really need school. So, a year went by, and my mom was basically like, hey, like, the house rule still stays. If you want to live here, that's fine. You can live here as long as you want, but I want you to at least try going to school. So I was like, you know what, whatever, I'll go back. But my focus was never on academics, right? Because, again, where we kind of grew up, we always were trying to survive. There was no point where I looked at school and was like, this will open doors for me. This could take me somewhere. It was more like an annoyance.
So let me jump in there, because one thing that I really believe in is that the greatest academic learning occurs through social interactions in a supportive environment. It's really, I believe in this constructivist approach that to learn the best, it needs to be in a community environment where you are learning by interacting with other people, not just nose to book. And so do you think that going through a homeschooling situation in those formative years contributed to you, maybe falling behind a little bit or not having the love for school, because it was never about a social interaction when you were first growing up? It was just like, mom is going to talk to me about it, and then I'm going to learn it for myself, and I'm going to go on. Do you think did that contribute to your not having that same interest in school as you were growing up?
It's interesting. I never really thought of it that way, and I don't know if I could answer it accurately, honestly. I think for me, what really contributed to my downfall was that, again, I was only focused on what was happening right now. And to me, when I did my schoolwork and I got a B, nothing changed for me, right? We still didn't have any money. We still, I still had to work really hard for everything I wanted. So, like, I didn't see anything come from that. And I had never been in a position where I was able to look forward and see kind of like what could happen. It was always like, let me just survive today, right? I'll get enough money that I can get myself something today that will feel secure, will feel safe, and then I'll worry about tomorrow, when tomorrow happens. And it's really interesting because I came across this one speaker, and he was referencing this study where they kind of mixed the neighborhood with low socioeconomic status with high socioeconomic status. And this has been something I've kind of held on to forever. And the concept was that by kids in this environment that were part of the lower socioeconomic status, they would see these like really large houses and this fancy lifestyle. And when you first think about it, you're thinking like that would kind of be crippling, right? Like, how do you grow up next to that? You feel defeated. You have nothing. But in actuality, what they were seeing was that these kids were tending to do better in school. They were tending to go further in their high school education, their college education, and then their careers, because they had an image of what their life could be. So instead of the negative of like, this is unfair, like they have this, I have nothing, like I'm getting beat down by these people that have less money, they were really like, oh, that could be me, and I'm going to make sure I get there. So how do I get there? I'm going to kind of do what they did. And I don't feel like I ever really identified that. So I just focused on like, what do I got to do to have a good life right now? So I don't know if that contributed.
So take us back to that point. Now you're in, you're graduated from high school. You're in college. You're really struggling at that spot, but your mom was like, listen, the rule still applies. Like if you're going to be living here, you need to, be going to school basically, or you're paying rent or whatever. You're out on your ass. Mm-hmm. So what happened then? So talk to us. Keep going with that story now.
So, my mom always had this way of just putting the fear of God in us, and it would always be by just dangling our living situation in front of us, right? Like, it was never like, if you don't do this, you're going to get grounded. It was like, well, you could find somewhere else to live. So I'm terrified, right? I'm 19 years old. I have a little bit of money. I actually made more money than, anyone in my family had at that point, but like not enough to go. I don't know how to live on my own. I'm basically like a little kid still. So I'm like, you know what, fine. Like, I just got to find something I'm interested in. And I kept holding on to this concept that, like, I could be great, I just don't want to, right? So I was like, I'll do something. At that point, I had become obsessed with the gym. When I graduated high school, when I got to high school, I was like 5'4". I was like 180 pounds, super chubby. They thought I was going to cap at 5'4", and then right before my senior year, I grew like crazy. So I ended up being 5'11". I dropped all this weight. I was 155. So now I'm like a rail. So in college, I get super into weightlifting. I was like, I just want to be big, and my motivation was horrible. I just wanted to get girls, right? I was homeschooled. I was awkward. I never had a girlfriend.
That's always everyone. I mean, that's what gets everyone started originally. Is like, oh, that's the way to do it. Everyone wants a guy with big muscles. So,
and think about it. To being homeschooled, it's not like you're checking out, Samantha and Alyssa, in your class. It's mom.
You're sitting there, look at mom and your brother, and you're like, oh, jeez. And then you get out there, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah. It was a boom.
So go ahead.
It was
you're motivated by the opposite sex and trying to get big and learn.
Right. So I'm thinking to myself, similar to the werewolf in Twilight who was jacked, I'm thinking to myself, I don't really have any game vocally. I know this about myself. So, but if I'm shredded, I'm jacked, that will help me. So I put all this emphasis on this. And it was always this concept of, trying to chase something, right? Not really knowing where I belong and just trying to figure out what it was, whether it was me getting this instant gratification by making some money, and that was going to be, how I made it, or chasing after this fitness goal, trying to get a girlfriend. I was very misdirected. But, I agreed. I complied. I talked to my mom, and I was like, I'll do physical therapy because I love athletics. And I think, people that get into the gym a lot, that's a natural career thought for them. If you've lifted a lot, I feel like at some point you may have considered, like, what if I did physical therapy? So I went and I talked to some programs, and they were like, listen, your GPA right now is a 0.89, which is like almost impossible, by the way. So it's a 0.89, and like it's going to be really hard for you, but you only did this 1 year. So you turn it around now and you're set. So they're like, you should go to community college. Don't waste money at Rutgers, Camden. Just go to Camden County. So I sign up there. I take like biology, pre-calc, which, is usually a high school course, but I didn't make it through pre-calc in high school. So I took pre-calc and a couple other things. And, I got a little bit part of the way in, and the same thing, the motivation just wasn't there. It wasn't really what I was passionate about. I wasn't interested. So I probably went to the first like 3 or 4 classes, and then I just stopped going. So, I carry my transcripts with me a lot of the time. Like if I go, talk to people sometimes, I'll be able to talk to different groups of kids that are struggling, and it's one thing I like to show them. So at Camden County, I only got 1 grade, which was an F in pre-calc because I withdrew from everything else. So now I'm back into like, well, I tried a little bit, but it's not for me. So I pulled out, but I did appease my mom enough to be able to stay living. So again, pouring all of my time and effort into working out and making some money. And I didn't realize that I was like right on the cusp of things starting to actually like get really crazy. Things were starting to really change. So a little bit after that next summer, now I'm in one of the best shapes of my life. Since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with football. I never played it down in my life, but I just loved it. And I always wanted to, but I had never really been that athletic. But now I'm 6'2". I'm like 220 pounds. I got way more athletic than I used to be, and I was like so obsessed with it. So I would just go run routes and play around like I was actually playing for fun. And this kid that I went to high school with, he had posted on Facebook. He was like, hey, I'm trying to put this tape together. I want to go play quarterback at college. I'm going to put together a little tape of me doing some throws, more current tape from my high school highlights, because we're like 2 years out now. Does anyone, want to come run routes? So I was like, I'm all over this. Like, this is me. It's a chance to be shirtless on camera. I'm going to catch some balls. So I went out. We filmed. I ran a bunch of routes. I'm very familiar with route trees just because I've watched football religiously, and it was great. And he, sent those all out. And it was kind of crazy. I got this one random email, and I thought that it was like not real because it made no sense, but it was from East Carolina University, and he had sent the tape there, and they had asked me if I had any tape. And I was like, no, I didn't like play anything in high school. And at first, again, I thought it was a joke. So I was like, it took me a while to even respond to it. But my buddy reached out to me and was like, hey, I don't know if you know, but they asked like, if you had any tape either. So I hit them back. I was like, no, I didn't play in high school. They're like, have you ever thought about like just trying to walk on somewhere? So now I'm like, dude, I'm like fired up because I'm like, I'm getting recruited to play college football. It's not how it was going at all, but that's how I felt. So I'm like, this is how I can change my life, right? I'm not that smart. I've never been that good at school. I'm not that interested, so I never really put that much effort into it. But like, I think I can work harder in the gym than almost anybody that I know. So like, this could be my way to really like do something great. So I get super amped. I start making these plans to go to East Carolina to play football, right? So every day I'm waking up, I'm working out twice a day. I eat like 3 Chipotle burritos a day. I still have my jobs, but I'm not going to school. And that's when it kind of hit me that if I wanted to go play football, I was going to need to do something about school, right? Because there's no way I was going to be able to transfer down there. So I re-enrolled at Rutgers Camden, and this time I was like, I actually was like, I had a fire under me. I was committed to actually try for the first time. Like, really, I was going to give it some effort. So I take my classes. I'm making note cards at home. My mom is even like, yo, this is crazy. I've never seen you study. And it was going okay. I got like I was getting some C's on tests, which for me was like amazing at that point. I was like, this will be good enough to get me there. I'm working out. I'm in great shape. And I go down for a visit. Because in the interim, my sister had applied there because I told her we were going to go there. I was like, I'm going to go there, and we're so close, like, you should come with me. You're about to graduate high school. I guarantee you I will be there. So she applied, and she actually got in before me because I was not academically eligible. So I drive down to visit her. I'm like, I'm so amped. I'm going to transfer there next semester. All I got to do is finish Rutgers. It's going to be good. I'm driving down. And I think one of the stories of my life is like, I just don't understand rules sometimes. Like, it sounds dumb, like I'm not taking accountability, but I think in my brain, I just don't process the severity of like a rule or a law. For example, a speed limit. So I'm driving down and I'm thinking in my maps, North Carolina is 400 miles away. So if I go 100 miles an hour, I'll get there in 4 hours. That will be awesome. I'm going 110 through Virginia, and this cop pulls me over. And I was like, dang, he got me. Like, good for him. He got me. But whatever, it'll be fine. He pulls me over. I give him a license. So I'm like, hey, so like, what's up? I just like, pay this ticket. He's like, no, like, you're most likely going to jail. So, dude, I'm like shitting myself now, right? Like, I'm not prepared for that at all. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He was like, I'm going to arrest you. And I'm like having an actual heart attack. So like, I can barely breathe. And I don't know what to do. So he sees my face, and he was like, honestly, I don't think I've ever seen anyone as scared as you, which is not my proudest moment. Like, I think I could be cooler now. You know? I think I've taught myself a lot about breathing and panic.
Twilight and panic attacks. Yeah, this is
It didn't start well for me. But yeah, so he basically recognized I was there. He's like, I'm not actually going to bring you in now, but he's like, you have to come back in December. And he was like, just so you know, this judge pushes for at least a year in jail for, this is reckless driving. This isn't speeding. And he was like, and this judge has a history of pushing for a year in jail. So I'm like, I'm wrecked, man. I go home, and I think, the early portion of my life can be described by just being very reactionary, right? No purpose to what I was doing. I would see something, and whatever I felt in that moment, that's what I would do. Whatever I wanted in that moment, I would do that. I wasn't very mature, and so I would just react on whatever emotion I had with no future thinking. So to me, I'm going to jail now, so college is useless. So even though I committed to going to TCU to play football, I was going to make a way. I started trying hard in school. As soon as that started to get kind of taken away from me, I hadn't developed the character to be there, and I just crumbled. So I stopped going. I got, again, another series of like F's and D's. And now I have 2 years worth of F's and D's, and my transcript is trash. And so, again, I dropped out. I was done. So that summer, I was sitting in the car with my mom at this ice cream place, kind of where we grew up. And I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 times I've ever cried in my life. Like, not that I am too manly to cry, because I think it's really important to understand your emotions and feel what you need to feel. But it just had never been something for me as an adult that I was into, that I got to that point, because I didn't care enough about anything. And we were sitting there talking at that moment. I just stopped and asked my mom, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I was like, I literally am an actual failure. Like, I'm going to be nothing. And like everything we went through growing up, with my dad passing away, with you guys having no money, with everything that you guys have tried to do to give us a normal life, like I'm going to do nothing with it. And I had had some, people growing up that had kind of told me this, like that I was lazy, that I was going to be homeless. My stepdad, who my mom married after my dad passed a few years later, he tried to pull me out of high school and put me in technical school, which is not a bad thing, right? Like having a trade is great, but his reasoning was that I wasn't smart enough to handle regular curriculum, so I should just go get a trade. And so all these things crept back to me in that moment, and I was like, yo, all of these people were right about me. This little bubble that I created for myself that I could be great, but I just didn't want to be, wasn't really true. It was collapsing, and I had realized, like, I was like, I'm literally gonna be nothing. So in that time period, I was faced with, like, what do I do now? Like, where do I go? And at that same time, man, it's like, we linked up and we were like, that was crazy timing. Sometimes things like that just happen, and I don't know what it is. I don't know why. Whether it be you're a religious person and you think it's a God thing, whether you just think it's the way the world is happening. But at this time, we had this great aunt who was like my mom's mother. She came to live with my mom, and basically, like, it got revealed that she had like $1 million. And like, she was like, I will literally give Joel money to just go to North Carolina, just move there, like go to school and just see if he can turn this around. So I like thought about it really hard, right? I'm now at like one of the lowest spots I had been at that point in my life, and I was like, I feel like I am an actual failure now, and I don't really want to go because I'm not going to do anything. So I'll just stay in my restaurant job, safe. But I don't know if you guys have ever had anything where like sometimes you can't sleep because there's just like some unrest in you, right? And I had that issue where I felt like I couldn't rest, I couldn't sleep, and it was because like something just didn't feel like I knew that if I stayed there, that was actually the end for me. I was never going anywhere. I would work construction forever, which is okay, but I hated it. I hated being dirty and sweating. As we've learned from my Twilight thing, I'm not really like, Mr. Manly. But, it just wasn't the life that I want. I didn't want to be have such a physical demanding lifestyle just to barely make it. And I couldn't rest on this idea, and so I started thinking about it. I was like, whether I can say that at that point I was a failure or not, one thing I know is I had never put myself in a position where, like, I will straight up drown if I don't succeed, because I always had a cushion, right? If you think about this whole story, one of the threads in the story is at the end of the day, I'd be like, oh, Mom, sorry, can't go to school. I had a place to live. At that point, I had food to eat. I didn't pay any rent, so all the money I made at my job, I just did whatever I wanted with. I was really comfortable, and there was no chance of me drowning there, right? I had complete security. So I think that, like, that was one of my first steps towards growing, like, as a man, was to be like, if I'm going to do anything, and maybe I won't, like, maybe I will completely fail, but I have to be in a position where, like, I straight up will drown on my own if I don't do that. So I was like, what I'm going to do for that then is I'm going to move. I don't know anything. I'm not even in ECU. They rejected me. I applied twice already. They said no. I can't get into the school. I have no plans. I have no job down there. I have nothing to do. I just have a little bit of money to move down there. But I was like, I'm just going to go, and we're going to figure it out. So I get down there. My sister's already down there. It's nice. Have a familiar face. You're good. So my sister's down there already, so I know at least one person. I go down there, and I was like, I'm gonna be, like, one characteristic I think that I've always had is, even though I never directed it properly, I have a little bit of like an obsessive personality. If I decide something, if I latch on to something, like, I will go after that thing until, like, I am actually dead. But I always directed in, like, video games. I wanted to be the best Madden player in the world, and I was like a top 10 Madden player for PS3 for a while, and that's where I put all my time in, right? So it's like, I knew that if I could do this thing, like, if I could really attack something, I could do it.
Right.
So I did that with ECU. I was like, you throw on motivational speakers, and you start listening to them, and you're like all amped up. You're like, yeah. Like, what, you just go every day. Like, old people always say, like, you walk in with it for a job application, you just keep going in, they'll give it to you eventually. And, our generation is like, that's absolute crap. But for me at ECU, I was like, I will be so annoying that they have to let me in. So I went there every single day for weeks, and I walked into the office. And in the South, everyone is really, like, pretty nice, kind of. I think they have some issues down there, but, like, when you talk to them, they're, like, super nice. So I walk in, the ladies in the registration office were awesome. They were so cool. They were so excited to see me. But I went in every day with my transcripts in hand. I had this beat up, like, is it vanilla folder or manila folder? What are they called?
Manila?
Yeah, manila folder. Yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor, everyone.
Yeah.
So, I had this beat up Manila.
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this beat up Manila folder, and I went in there every day, and I was like, hey, I am trying really hard to change my entire life, and not just mine, but like my family's life. And to do that, I need to play football here. I was still stuck on this idea that I was gonna play. And I was like, I need to play football here to do that, and so I need to get in. So, like, can I get in? They're like, that's not how it works.
That's not how any of this works.
They're like,
You're like, can I rub your back, lady? I'll give you a foot rub. I'll pop my shirt off when the
Did
full
you see
moon
what my
is
body
out.
looks like? You know how much time I've spent in the gym? Trust me. I'll do anything.
Yeah. So, we kind of had fun about that, and then when I came in, it was like they were really cool. Like one day, one lady literally had some food, like lunch, there waiting for me, and we just kind of chatted. She's like, "Listen, like you still have to apply. This is not the way." And I honestly, it's been so long. I don't remember if it was like 3 weeks to 4 weeks, whatever. But at one point, one of the deans of admissions, she like pops her head out the door. And she's like, all right, like, just come into my office. So I get my old folder. I go in there, I sit down, and she was like, I have now heard about you a lot, right? She was like, we've never talked, but the office ladies talk about you all the time. I've literally heard your voice because you're kind of loud. It's like, you come in here all the time and ask to get in. And she was like, and you've showed up literally every single day. So she was like, at this point, you're like kind of getting on my nerves. And I was like, yes, that was the plan. So she goes, listen, there is this law in North Carolina. It's kind of like one of those old grandfather laws that if you get an associate's degree from a North Carolina university, all the state schools have to let you in. They can't say no. It doesn't matter what you did before this. They have to let you in. So I was like, this is amazing. She's like, there's a community school like 10 minutes from here. Sign up. She looked at all my transcripts. She's like, you have a lot of Fs, a lot of Ds, but you do have a couple Cs in here. She's like, you could get this done in 1 year if you did like 26 credits each semester, which is like a nightmare. So I was all in, man. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna take 26 credits. Now, I had never gotten an A in college in my life. In high school, I had only gotten an A in gym, I think. And she was like, you need to do well, though. You can't just go and slack. Like, if you're gonna change your life the way that you said you're going to, like, you need to go put in work. So I'm committed. And the only route for me to get there was to take the weirdest set of classes. It was communication. It was like anatomy and physiology 1. I had to take chemistry 1, which I knew nothing about, and a couple other things in my first semester. But I was amped, man. So I started listening to motivational speakers and different people to try to get pumped. And at this point, I didn't really understand the difference between motivation and discipline yet, right? I'm still in the growing process here. But I have this glimpse. I can see now into the future a little bit that, like, things could change. Where I was at the ice cream shop, realizing that I wasn't going anywhere, like, that actually may not be true because now I can see another path. So I came across this guy that I love. I don't know if you ever listened to him. But his name's Inky Johnson. He was a football player for Tennessee, and he basically had a serious injury, and his whole life changed. And so I had listened to some of his stuff just because I thought it was really interesting. I love football. And he said this thing that I've never forgotten. It will resonate with me to the day that I die. And he was like, when his injury happened, he was upset, but it didn't really change anything for him because what he really enjoyed about everything that he was doing, trying to become an NFL star, trying to make money, was that he really enjoyed the process of everything that he was doing. Where he got the product, the end result, none of that really mattered. And he, like, this quote that I love is he was like, if I was at McDonald's, I would be the best McDonald's worker you've ever seen because I enjoy every single thing that I do. So that kind of like hit me, and I was like, what if I had fun with this? Like, what if I enjoyed what I'm doing? Like, I have a chance to change my entire world right now. Like, after all the screw-ups, failing out of college, twice withdrawing once, almost going to jail, like, all these crazy things that happen,
So let me jump in there then because you were Rudy. I mean, they can make Rudy Part 2 pretty much and call it, Joel the werewolf. Guy, full moon over Joel. But you were
professional
Rudy.
PS3
You were
player.
the guy you were such a pain in the ass. They're like, Jesus Christ, Rudy, fine, come and work here, and we'll see if we can get you into Notre Dame. That's what you did. But you took this experience and you figured out how to do it. You had this level of perseverance. But I'm also interested. You said avoiding jail. I don't want to like gloss over that part of it. So as you're going to community college and taking fucking 8 classes a semester.
Mm.
You know, people bitch about taking 5 classes a
Yeah.
semester. You were taking at least 8, so some of them were
And
full
going from
credit.
not being able to handle what you were doing before, like, which was, you know, you're doing the bare minimum there and then not showing up and then getting to literally the most amount of classes you could possibly fit into a schedule. It's like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I had to get a special permission to even take that many classes.
And so you're taking these 8 classes, but this spot in Virginia where you were going 180 miles an hour, and that's still looming over your head. So close the loop on that. Like, how did that resolve itself before we continue? With
Okay,
the story
yeah.
of East Carolina.
It's tough because, you know, this journey's been so long that, you know, I definitely glossed over that to try to move forward. But I actually did get it resolved before I went to East Carolina,
Okay.
which was good because, you know, I had basically failed Rutgers again because of this. And then what I learned was that by being so reactionary, I was reacting to something that never happened yet. And so I actually learned a great lesson from this. And so I failed out of Rutgers for the second time because I was going to jail for a year. But I got a lawyer because I was making money in the restaurant and construction. I got a lawyer. He told me, like, bring some character witnesses. I brought 3 character witnesses down with me. I wore a suit, which, like, I didn't even own. And I got there, and basically, to be honest, I think I benefited from the fact that I looked like a normal, productive member of society because there was no reason. He literally had sent other people to jail that day. And he was like, you know, I got up there, and I had told him, I was like, look, like, I'm trying to change my life. Like, I went back to school. I was doing all those things. I had my pastor come up, and he was like, look, like, yes, this is a goofball, but he's not a bad kid. You know, and my stepdad came up, and so people were kind of, like, talking on my behalf, and the judge was like, listen, like, I need to make sure that you learn a lesson here. But one of the benefits that you have is that the cop that pulled me over came in and was like, this person was seemingly, like, I genuinely believe they were unaware of the consequence of what they had done. That doesn't seem like a good enough excuse, but I could see it on their face that, like, yes, they were speeding, but, like, he did not realize how serious this was, and he was very cooperative, and that kind of really helped me. So the judge knocked it down. It was like $1,000 fine, and they changed it to improper driving by speeding. And he was like, you don't have to spend, you know, this time in jail that we usually do. But he was like, I swear to you, if you even get pulled over in Virginia again, you know, you're in trouble.
And in jail, just so you know, if you have Taylor Loeffner posters up on the wall in jail,
Yeah.
your experience in jail is going to be a whole different ball game.
You're lubing up your body to do some push-ups. It's going to be a different experience for you, I think, than you wanted from that workouts you've been doing.
All right, so then Inky Johnson, right? So
Yeah.
The motivational speaker was Inky Johnson. So you're hearing from him about whatever you're doing, you're going to do it the best you possibly can do it. You're going to go whatever it is you're going to do full force forward. That's going to be what you're about. So now you hear that and you're understanding what motivation is and what discipline is. And now, you know, you're at this spot, you're taking these credits. So bring us back into your journey.
Okay. Yeah. So I basically convinced myself that, you know, I still had never tried hard and failed because I failed at Rutgers the second time because I thought I was going to jail and I didn't really try again, right? So I kind of had built this concept. This is like a thread of mine until I really learned to grow up. So I was like, well, now I'm gonna reset everything. I'm gonna enjoy this process, and now I'm gonna really try for real. So, dude, I printed out this schedule on my wall. I had highlighter. I spent so much time making a schedule, which is confusing, that I never looked at. But I had these things on my wall, and they were my symbol that, like, I was gonna do it. I was structured. I printed out this thing that said whatever it takes, and I literally nail it to my ceiling above my bed because I realized that, like, I felt so excited right there in that moment, but this is when it started to flip to me that, like, if I just showed up for the gym excited on day one, I would have worked out, I would have been sore the next day, I never would have went back. And so I started using the gym as my sort of foundation for how I was going to approach all of the school. Basically, how I was going to do well in school was that what did I do at the gym is that I was disciplined, dude. I ate boiled chicken and rice because at that point, you know, I wasn't as educated. I didn't realize you could still be really athletic without eating, like, going that crazy. But, like, I ate boiled chicken and rice for every meal, hard-boiled eggs, and I was like, I did that. I was disciplined, and I can do that now. But in order to do that, I want a reminder so that when I wake up in the morning and I want to go back to bed, that I get my lazy ass out of bed and I go put in the work that I promised myself I was going to put in. So I had this, you know, little printout that said whatever it takes. And every morning I woke up and I looked at it and I was like, I got to get up because, like, if I don't, I'm just disappointing myself. I'm the one that said that I was going to do this. So I went, man, and I was grinding every single day. I would wake up. I still wanted to play football, so I woke up. I did weights in the morning. I went to class all day. I went to the field afterwards. I would sneak on to the ECU practice field because I looked like I belonged there, and I would just like run routes, play. Some of the guys would come out. I got to meet Demario Davis was one of the quarterbacks there. Or he was one of the quarterbacks there. Like when I was first there, it's like a long time ago, and he like came out. Like I didn't shoot. He threw me passes. We got to work out a little bit. So it was like cool. Like I felt like I was on the team already. And then I would go home and I would study. I got like multicolored note cards. Like I think everything that a person does when they don't really know how to study yet is like what looks cool. I'll get all the different colors. Each color will mean something else. I got all these different pens and highlighters. But dude, I was putting in hours. I didn't have any friends. I didn't talk to any girls. That was part of my thing. I was like, I've been chasing girls so long, and it didn't help me that I'm just gonna not focus on this, to the point that one of the people at my school that kept asking me to hang out asked me if I liked men because I didn't want to hang out there. Because I was like, no, I'm focused. Like I gotta get where I need to be. Exactly. So yeah, I did that every day, man. It came time for my first test, and I was amped. I got my anatomy test back. I got an A. Dude, that's the first college A or high school A on a real test I'd ever gotten, and I was like, yo, I knew it. I knew that I could be great if I wanted to. I got my communications test back, A. I get my chemistry test back. I got a 41. Do you know how bad you have to do on an exam to get a 40? No, out of 100. A 41. And this, like, again, just pure devastation, because now no matter how I tried to wiggle my way through giving myself excuses in life if I didn't try that hard, I put my soul on the line to do this, and I got a 41. So I was just like devastated, man. I was like, well, like that's kind of the end of the journey. If I can't pass the course, I'm not going to make it to ECU. I'm not going to play football. I'm not going to change my life, my family's life. So I started thinking about that, and I was like, dude, you bastard. Like, you've had so many opportunities, and every time this happens, I do the same thing. I would be like, oh, no, and I panicked, and I wouldn't breathe, and I would start to freak out. And I was like, I got to stop doing that, right? I got to stop being so reactionary, because every time I do that, I take these huge step backwards, and I leave, honestly, like a lot of collateral damage in the way when you do that. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, I remember one time, I was in the shower, and I don't know if you guys have ever gotten in a shower when there was cold, like no hot water. It gets really cold, and for a lot of physiologic reasons, your body basically goes into panic. You can't breathe. You have that feeling of like you're dying, basically. You're like, and you can't take any breath. So I was in that kind of moment, and I was like, I'm going to do something to teach myself to just calm down. I got a 41. I suck. I can't control this. I don't know what I'm doing. But, like, what if I could do a little bit of something I could control? So I went into the bathroom, and I do this actually after every shower. I'm not one of those people that wakes up and takes a cold shower. I think those are psychopaths, honestly. But I got in the shower. I took a hot shower, and at the very end, I turned it to cold. And my lungs, it was like they just shriveled. I couldn't breathe. And I was like, I will stand here, and I will not leave this shower until I can breathe like a normal human being. Because if I can do that, if I can face this when my body wants me to basically die, when my body's freaking out, if I could just grab a little bit of that control and teach myself to stay calm and breathe, then I think that I can do something else. I could get somewhere else. So I did it, and it took me like 2 minutes before I could breathe. And it was just because my body adjusted to the cold, but I believed it. And so then the next day I did the same thing, and I was like, at the end, I'm going to cold water. And I just started to teach myself to be calm, to not panic. So I took that, and I went to the library, and I got some books on how to learn. And I was like, I don't know what my learning style is. Am I a visual learner? Am I a tactile learner? Meaning, like, if I flick a pen, will it help me remember stuff? Am I or a kinetic learner is what that'd be called. Am I an auditory learner? And I started to learn all these different things, and I was like, I can do this. There's a route. I just have to figure out what works for me. So I went in to see my chemistry teacher, and I was like, hey, listen, here's the deal. Like, I've ruined almost my entire life. I can't see myself getting another chance after this. And I was like, I need to get into ECU to play football. Like, this is what I'm here for. And I was like, I have to get an A in everything. That's what I promised myself I was going to do. And she basically was like, listen, like, you're really nice. I don't want to discourage you. She's like, but we have, like, 5 exams, including the final. She was like, she did the math. She was like, if you want to get an A, you'd have to get a 99 on every single thing in order to do that. And she was like, it's just not realistic. So I was like, if I come here every single day, like I was like, if you don't have time, it's fine. But if you have time, if I come in, will you teach me? Like help me figure out how to learn this? And she was like, if you show up, I will be here. So I went every day, and I just started to learn. I learned that chemistry was not about what I thought. I thought learning was memorization, right? Because I didn't know. So I made all those colorful note cards. It was fun, and it worked in things that require memorization, anatomy. But I started to learn about what actual problem solving looked like. It wasn't just knowledge; it was application of knowledge. It wasn't like I walked in the gym and I was like, oh, I memorized how to do like a deadlift, so like I'm good to go. I had to practice. I had to learn. I had to figure out what my form was, and so I started to apply that to school. And when things got rough, I started to do kind of what I did at the end of the shower. I just took time to breathe. And I was like, I already have control of my body now, which means that I can figure out the rest. So I put in work and work, and I just kept going. And I got, for the rest of that semester, and in fact, only one test for the rest of my collegiate career did I get under 100 on. I got 100 on every single exam that I took for the next 5 years, except for one, and it's because I didn't know there was a question on the back. And it was that was kind of my turning point where I was like, no, I don't want to drown. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of freaking out every time something goes wrong. I don't want to be homeless like people told me I was going to be. Like, yeah. I don't want to be someone that couldn't handle curriculum, and now it's on me. I only have myself to disappoint here. And I promised myself I was going to do something. So, I just lived that and breathed that and just kept working. And all of a sudden it just started to work, man. So, that got all hundreds after that.
Are you still in communication with your chemistry teacher?
Yes, actually I am. Yeah, I talk to her pretty like every once in a while. Like holidays and stuff. It's crazy because you would think that would be like the most important person in my life, but it wasn't until ECU where I met like one of my best friends now. It's like my life mentor and is also a chemistry teacher. But I always reach out to her. Like, when I got into med school, I sent her this huge note, and I was like, this was literally like you changed all of this. And she was obviously so great. She's like, oh, you put in the work. But it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, you invested in something when I had given no reason, right? I had failed out twice. I had withdrawn. I was failing again. And so with no evidence to the contrary, you still invested in what I was telling you that I could do if I just had the chance. So, yeah, I love getting to reach out and talk to her.
And so now spoiler alert, you don't get another grade under 100 for the rest of your collegiate career. So talk to us now from that point, applying to ECU.
Yeah, man, things are good. So from there, it was easy. When they saw what happened there, I had, like 50-something credits in 1 year, and they were all A's. I didn't even have to do any work. They let me right in. I got in. I was, like, so set. I was super excited to play football, but now I had gotten really passionate about chemistry, right? Because I went to war for that grade. And so I started to love it. I was like, man, this is so awesome. I was so excited. So I kind of wanted to do that. And when I started doing really well at school and sciences, I was doing good at anatomy, I was doing good at biology, I was doing chemistry. I was like, yo, like, what if, like, I know at one point I thought about being a physical therapist, but I was like, what if I could be a doctor, right? So one of the parts of the story that we didn't really talk about, and I know it's kind of, jumping back in time, but when my dad was diagnosed with lymphoma, we still had no money. Our insurance was garbage. We went to whatever doctor we could find, and they misdiagnosed him with the wrong one. And he got treated for the wrong cancer for 3 years. My mom, I don't know how she did it, man. I have to ask her. I don't know if she like took out a loan or something to go get him another doctor. And this doctor was like, why didn't they do these tests? Like, this isn't the right cancer. So they figured out it was wrong, and they started treating him the right way. And he was responding, but all his organs had shut down. So he passed away. And it was really just because he didn't get the right diagnosis, right? We didn't have the resources to do that. So, I started to think about it. I never in my life thought about being a doctor, but I also didn't think I was smart enough. And now I was like, I'm pulling hundreds in hard classes. I was like, what if I could be the person that makes sure that does not happen to someone, right? To create resources for people that don't have resources, to be able to make sure that someone's looking at a patient with enough care that they're not going to let them fall through the cracks. And so this dream started to build. It started to shift away from football towards like, what if my impact, like I wanted to get here for football for me, right? But what if my impact would be a lot bigger than that? I could stop a family from losing a father or, a mother, a child, something like that. And that kind of like lends into what I've really built a lot of my life on since that, which was understanding the difference between a transient impact, which is something that I want right now. I might make a difference on like one quick thing in my own life, versus a generational impact, which is if I invest my resources, if I invest my skills in the people around me, in trying to make a difference in whatever space that I'm in, then I can actually make an impact that goes beyond, what I'm doing in this moment. And then that's when I started to really shift towards wanting to be, a doctor, a physician, because I felt like that was going to be a really great avenue for me to make some sort of difference. Because the story to get there, maybe that could inspire some other kid, that was born in Camden, New Jersey, and didn't have any money and wasn't doing well, to be like, wait, hold on, like, that guy did it, so I can do it. And I listened to a lot of your guys' stuff, so I know at one point you guys talked about the guy that broke the 4-minute mile barrier. There are all these stories out there of like, you see it, one person do it, then you can do it. And so I was like, I will try to be that then. So I get into TCU, dude, I'm amped. I was like, I'll probably do neuroscience because it has some chemistry, it has some biology, and I'll use that as my road to medical school. I'm at orientation day. I'm on campus. I'm like on a real college campus like they have in movies, and I'm just like, yo, like this is crazy. This is what working hard in school, like this can open doors for you. Like I made it. I'm here. And I was like, I'm gonna go neuroscience, and just like how I always do in my life, I met a cute girl. And I was like, she's like, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just like walking around. She's like, oh, let's walk around together.
Yeah.
So I was like, where are you going? Because it was time to go to wherever your major was. And she's like, oh, I'm going to biochemistry. I was like, that's crazy. Me too. So I was like, well, I don't need neuroscience. I'll just change later. So I got some lessons you don't learn until later. I had not learned that lesson yet, right?
So good. I love that so much.
So I go into biochemistry. And it was a great experience because I had an advisor in biochemistry. And I think, early in my life when I was really trying to change things, I think I made a mistake that a lot of us can, because it's very powerful, is to use like negative emotions, like a negative motivator, right? Someone telling you can't do something, and be like, oh, well, I'm going to show you. And it's super powerful, right? You can actually do a lot with that. And I think some people probably like that approach. And I used it at this time. So I went into biochem. I had this advisor. This dude looked like he was from the Grinch, like the Who's. He looked exactly like that. Yeah. So I'll never forget this guy's name or his face. I sit down. I'm like, I want to go to medical school. My dude starts cracking up laughing. And I was like, I'm like pretty uncomfortable now. Like, why are you laughing? This is weird. And he's like, so he's like,
was this at like the front of the class, like you're doing?
Oh no, thankfully no.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was like, tell me about yourself. I want to go to medical school. And then he starts busting up laughing.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit.
That's where we had a drop of Robert De Niro from Cape Fear.
Yeah.
Where he's laughing like a psychopath.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been perfect for that. But.
So this was a little bit later. So I made it through orientation. I followed that girl around for a little bit, and then fast forward, we get to go meet with our advisors to like make our schedules. So at this point, it's one-on-one. He has my transcripts, and again, he starts laughing at this concept that, I'm going to go to medical school. So I kind of try to figure out. He's like, listen, like so far what you've done is kind of cool, right? It's fun, like it's like a cute story. The man said it was a cute story. And he's like, it's a cute story. He's like, but look, you've only succeeded at a community college. He's like, do you know how many people I could throw in a community college and could pull A's in all their classes? He's like, this is a major 4-year institution. He's like, if I were you, I would switch to something like English or communications. That's not as science heavy, and you can still do something with it, but might not be as academically challenging. Because med school, you have to get all A's. And I was like, dude, like, who is this guy? Like, so I started thinking about it. I was like, man, like, this has happened to me before. And I even told him that. I was like, what's funny is, like, this has happened to me before. Like, my stepdad wanted me to not be in high school because I wasn't smart enough. And I was like, and now I'm here. It took me a long time to get here, but I'm here. So I was like, I don't really care what you say. And I was like, and actually, like, I don't even want you as an advisor. I'll make my own schedule. And I'm going to do it. And I was like, not only am I going to do it, now I'm going to go after like basically 3 degrees. I'm going to try for like 2 to 3 degrees of the hardest classes I can think of, because I'll show med schools if they want to laugh that I attacked this. I was not afraid. I didn't take easy courses. I went at the hardest courses I could find. And I'm going to get an A in every single one of them. So I went down the biochem route. I started signing up for those. I started signing up for all the hard chemistry classes too, because there's some overlap. And I was like, maybe I'll do this both. I'll get chemistry. I'll get some biochem. And I started off, dude, hit the ground running. Same strategy I had used at that Pitt Community College, was that I woke up, whatever it takes, right above my head. And I got up and I was like, at this point, like, there's blood in the water for me, right? Like, it's not only like I conceptually think I could be somewhere, now I can see it. I can see myself walking into med school. And I was like, at that point, I believe this so hard, it does not matter what anyone says to me. And I think that's something that's like really powerful, right? I talk to my wife about this sometimes if she's, struggling with studying or where she wants to go or what she wants to do with her medical journey. Is like, I promise you that if you can see yourself there, like, It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I literally guarantee you that you'll get there because I have done that. I have seen it. Um, so I saw myself walking into med school, man. And I just took that with me and just started getting A after A after A, and it was just going amazing. And I kind of felt like I had arrived. I was there. Things were going great. One of the chairs of the chemistry department reached out to me and was like, hey, like, I think you should really consider not just doing like a bachelor's of arts in chemistry, but like get a bachelor in science in chemistry, because like you're now scoring well on like national exams. You're in like one of the highest percentiles. So I met with her, and she was great. This is actually like one of my best friends now. She's like one of my biggest life mentors, and she kind of helped guide me through, this process of adding this second degree. Um, and just kept going, man. So things are going great, and my journey is kind of like these things will just keep popping up that try to kind of like knock you down. So in my junior year, all of a sudden I couldn't get financial aid. So it's like, no one in my family has any money. I now can't get loans for school. And it's like I had worked so hard for like, it was like 3 years now. And now they're like, you're not going to be able to come here because you can't afford it. I can't get any aid. I don't know what to do. So I was like, again, though, that same concept of like, I could still see myself walking into med school, which means that there's a way. So I got 4 part-time jobs. And while I was doing the chemistry and the biochemistry, I just worked them, man. I was a personal trainer at a gym called Fitness Connection. I was like the school's lead tutor for physics, chemistry, biochemistry, and anatomy. I started doing this other tutoring, like the little tutoring centers that they have places. I got a job there. And then I did like private personal training where I like went to people's houses and did that. And for like 45 or 50 hours a week, I was just like working. And then every other time I had, I was just studying, doing everything. So didn't really have time for anything, and just made enough money, man, to get through, paid for school, didn't have to take any like loans for that, and just kind of kept showing up. So it was just grinding, because at that point, again, I could see where I wanted to be, and because I could see it, I knew that I could find a way. I just had to keep putting in the work to get there. So that kind of led to this like crazy point where like I had failed out of school and I was going nowhere, and I was going to be a failure. To fast forward 5 years, now I get to graduate with a dual bachelor's of science in biochemistry and chemistry. I get to speak at my graduation. I got into medical school at Rutgers. It was the first place I applied to. I got an interview right away. They called me 2 days later, and they're like, you're in. And so, like, I'm literally, like, on top of the world right now, right? Like, if you think about, my whole concept of finish the race, which I know we'll talk about, like, that race was over for me. I made it. Like, I achieved my goal. I did everything I was going to say. And it was kind of poetic because I went home. I was super excited. I went to one of my buddy's house, and his dad is someone I've been really close with my whole life. And, we were kind of celebrating, and he kind of pulled me aside, and he was like, look, this is so great. Like, it's so awesome that you are on top of the world. And he was like, I just want to tell you something like that I've learned as a man. He's like, you'll have these moments where you're on top of the world, but he's like, you're not always going to stay there. He was like, it never works that way. So he was like, enjoy where you're at, but he was like, just be mindful that like this may not always feel this way. And like, you may have another time period where you're actually at the rock bottom again, but now you know the way out. You can kind of get there.
All right, so I'm going to use this opportunity right now. We are going to stop episode 1 of this 2-part interview.
I was gonna say
because this.
Did you get chills when he fucking spoke on that last? Like, it's honestly probably one of the most inspirational stories that I've ever heard in my entire life, and I'm not kidding. Like that. It seriously, I really mean that. And what I loved, what you spoke about is, it's combining the idea that people talk about with manifestation, right? Where that's like the visualization of the whole thing. But applying that to just getting off your ass and doing the work in order to get it. You can't just believe it. You have to be it. You have to be like, no, if that's going to happen, then I still need to take all these steps to get there. And that was like the most, again, that's where you're combining both of these thought processes where you can see it and then you're also doing all the work to get there because you can see it, because it's already happened.
I just hope that when this turns into a movie, because this is Rudy Part 2. And for the audience that's listening or watching this right now, this is just the tip of the iceberg with this man's journey. We mentioned the hero's journey, that you had 2 hero's journeys that you've been on in your life. This was the first one. So we just came to the conclusion of the first hero's journey, and you just wove us through this web of unbelievable stories of perseverance, where there were so many times in your life that you were down and you gave up on yourself and you there was something that happened that you were like, you know what, I'm going to keep going a little bit further. I'm just going to keep going that one step further. Whatever it was, the series of events that happened, someone in your life that you heard a message at the specific time. But what a great point, Anthony, about it's that combination of believing that there is this, larger power, that something is helping you, that if you believe it, if you see it, that things will go in your direction. But you can't just leave it there. I can't just see myself. I always have to put in the work. I have to wake up every morning. I have to look up on the ceiling to that message that I write for myself. I need to understand that if I'm going to get to where I need to go, it needs to start with me doing the actual work myself. Believe in it, and then also do it at the same time.
Yeah. And that was like when it was almost like the same thing where you felt when you were in bed and you were just going to go back to being a waiter, and you said something felt a little like you felt like if you stayed there, this was going to be your life. It was over. And you knew that moment, like it was just this internal feeling that you had that you needed to get out. But it's unbelievable. The amount of, I'm just putting myself in your shoes and like someone telling me, well, first of all, did you call up, did you send like your acceptance letter or whatever to the advisor? Do you like, cause like that would have been like, send that with a big bow on it. You're like, here you go, brother. It's funny, right?
So I didn't send it to him because I had an even better moment, in my opinion, is that when they pulled me on stage to speak at my graduation, that man was in the front row, and I had won an award that nobody like me had ever won before. There's this like North Carolina award. They only give it to kids that are in what's called like honor college, and it's like basically they're recruited to be great. They have all the resources given to them. They have a free ride, and no transfer student, no non-honors college ever did it. And I got nominated for it, and I won it, and so I got to stand up and actually talk about it, and like how to do this thing with no resources, and maybe how we should consider like opening up some resources. But while I got to talk about this, they introduced about how I was going to medical school, and I like locked eyes with this dude, and it was just like, dude, I never want to, you never want, like, I don't want to put someone down, right? It's not about that, but it's just like, look, man, like, I hope now that he knows that there are power in your words. You tell someone they can't do something, like that may be the end for them. My journey could have stopped there. So when we locked eyes, like I believe that he felt that. Like, yo, watch what you say to people, because, like, yes, I took this negative motivation and turned it around, but, like, you have the power to change somebody's life. If you supported me there, I still would have done just as good, right? But I would have felt it would have been different, right? I would have had someone pick me up and keep working with me as I'm growing, and that's, what, my life mentor that I have in the chemistry department did. She was kind of just with me side by side, and, like, that type of person, that's the generational impact I'm talking about. So when we locked eyes, I think that he felt that.
Yeah.
Like, you thought you were going to invite him over for some who pudding, who hash, and some roast beast. Is that what the who's ate? Part of the grill?
Something like that.
So this is part one of a two-part, at least a two-part. I mean, who knows? Between now and the time that we record part two, you might have another adventure that we have a third hero's journey that we need to talk about. But like I mentioned, part two will be a must listen after people understand your journey, where it started from, where you got to, and then how you had to rebuild all over again. So as a spoiler, part two is even more interesting than part one. We haven't recorded it yet, but I just see where it's going. So before we get to the second part of your hero's journey, right now, where can people find you, Joel? Tell the Building Men audience where they can find you.
All right,
just in case if they hear part one, they're like, I need to find this man.
Yeah. Right now, you can find me on Instagram. So there's two options. You can go to my personal one, which is just Joel.Glotfelty. You can also go to the FTR Apparel Inc. Instagram, and I control both of those. So if you send me a DM, that's fine. I would say you can email me, but spelling my name can be difficult. So my email is just joel.glotfelty@gmail. But all of those things I check really regularly. So if you ever have any questions, you want to chat, or like honestly, one of my favorite things is to be able to talk to. I regularly talk to students that are coming up that are struggling and haven't had academic success and are kind of frustrated because people around them don't believe in them, and we talk all the time. So even if you're just listening to that and you're in that spot and you're like, yo, like I've jacked up my life, like, and you just want to chat about it, like I've lived this, and I've found that you can do a lot by just showing up. So you can always reach out for whatever you want. And
we'll put all of that information in the show notes so people don't have to like go to school on how to spell your last name. I'm wondering who's going to play you in the movie that made for the movie of this.
Yeah.
What actor is going to play you? You got to go to Taylor.
So
Walker,
I want,
right? I
yeah,
don't know. I mean,
maybe I want Henry Cavill if he's not too old.
Yeah. That would be nice.
I feel like I've tried to, model my build after Superman's. So,
Oh God, I would love to have him play.
We're going to be an integral part in this movie here. So who you got going for you? You got
What,
who's
that's
gonna
gonna play
you?
me?
Are you going to play yourself?
Well, so is it right now, like in this moment? Because I feel like I would want. I'd probably want Bradley Cooper to play me.
Yeah, it's gonna
I
be
really,
Cooper.
yeah.
so I feel like I could see Bradley Cooper playing you,
Yes.
and I was thinking more of like a cross between Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom for you.
Why do I have like the most sensitive, like, whatever? You know what?
Sensitive fella.
Yeah, who cares? They're both sexy, right? You're not allowed to. Whatever. I don't take offense to anything. If you told me you read the whole Twilight series, it's fine.
All right. So what we'll do is we will publish this as part 1 of a 2-part episode with Joel. And thank you so much for being on the Building Men podcast. You can find Building Men on Instagram, building.men, buildingmencoach@gmail.com. We're on YouTube as well. Everything is on the Building Men Instagram page. Under the link tree, we'll put all the information about Joel and Finish the Race up there. You got to stay tuned. You got to check out part 2 because part 2 it's going to get absolutely crazy. If you think part 1 was crazy, wait until you hear part 2 of this episode. Go a step further than you thought you can go today. Joel, any last words, my man?
Is kind of what I always try to say now is, just keep showing up. Like, no matter what you're facing, you accomplish way more than you think by just physical presence. Just show up where you need to be. If you're not doing the best, it's okay. Just keep showing up and see where you want to be and hold on to that no matter what happens. And if that's all you take away from this, then I think that's awesome.
Anthony, any last words?
Nope.
All right. Well said. We will see you next time on Building Men.